Welcome back to another episode of Sports Medicine on Tap. My name is Brandon O'Line. I'm sitting at Neck of the Woods Brewing Company with my good friend Dr. Frey. Dr. Frey, how are you?
Loving the Olympics.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely, it's that time of year. And tonight we're doing a special Olympic show in the heart of, being in the middle of the Olympics right now. And our guest is Sam Arnold, a physical therapist from Clifton Park, New York. She's on the phone right now. So Sam, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I'm glad we got connected with you. It's funny how this kind of works out. Like over time, we've definitely had our suggestions of guests come up, and unfortunately, we kind of get sometimes people who are just a little bit irrelevant for our podcast. And
right.
our editor Kyle
just doesn't quite fit.
It just doesn't fit right.
Yeah.
And Kyle set us up with you, and we kind of been going back and forth via email, text, phone calls. But you are like the perfect person to have in the middle of the Olympics.
Right
now is the time.
It's perfect. It's amazing. Yeah.
I know. The Olympic hype is real. It's crazy.
Sam, tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Utica, New York. I went to Springfield College in Massachusetts, did their 3+3 program there. So it's 3-year undergrad, 3-year doctorate program. Graduated with my doctorate in physical therapy in 2013. Moved to Clifton Park, New York, and that's when I started working for Nicola Therapy and Associates, which is where I still am 11 years later. I became the supervisor of our Clifton Park office at the end of 2014, and then got my board certification in orthopedics in 2016. And then in the 10 years I've been in our Clifton Park office, we've grown from a 1 and change therapist office to we now have 4 full-time PTs and an OT on staff. And we're across the street from a local high school, Shenendehowa. So we get a lot of athletes and their families from there. I see all orthopedic and sports injuries, but I would say I specialize more in treating knees, specifically ACLs and shoulders.
Yeah.
And then I have this little niche of working with gymnasts that it just kind of grew organically over the past decade with me having a background in gymnastics and also a gymnastics coach. And then just honestly, word of mouth over the years and treating.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of why you're the perfect person for this conversation of just like you have the experience, you've coached it, you treat it, you've seen it, you've done it yourself as an athlete. So it again, I can't be more thankful for Kyle for hooking us up.
Right.
Yeah.
and I think that's typically or often that's how it works out. Like it's something that you're passionate about, that you tend to love just a little bit more than everything else because you've done it yourself, and you just have a different insight because you've done it. There's nuance to it that other people who haven't done it don't fully understand. Like that's the typical pattern, right?
Yeah.
Like that eventually you just start to develop a little bit of niche, especially if you're coaching at the same time that you're doing all of this.
Yes.
That's really, really, really cool. So yeah, I think we're gonna. Well, first, have you been watching the rest of the Olympics, or just really focusing in on the gymnastics?
I know, it's so funny.
Portion?
I'm like, I have been locked into gymnastics. I'm still working full time, right? If we could rally for like the U.S. to all get like 2 weeks off of work, so we could just
that'd be great.
Seriously.
Great. But I kind of get into everything. I feel like that super patriotic side comes out, a little bit of diving. I love watching track and field too.
Sure.
I actually played volleyball as well into college. So I've been trying to kind of keep an eye on volleyball a little bit. But yeah, gymnastics is really where I'd be embarrassed to tell you like the increase in screen time that I've had over the past week just from following like what's happening in the gymnastics world.
So I'm going to ask, and it's kind of getting us off a little bit off topic, but I was so blown away by watching this. Did you see Kristen Faulkner, the American cyclist who won gold medal for women in the road race?
Yeah. So actually, my husband was the one watching that, and then a patient and I were talking about it earlier this week. Yeah, absolutely crazy.
I was utterly blown away, and I feel like it's a story that has not gotten enough attention because I feel like it so much epitomizes what the Olympics were about. Like she born in Alaska, Homer, Alaska, 31-year-old who's a rower. She rode at Harvard and doesn't really have a cycling background. Learned to ride or began riding in New York City. Like we're riding, doing circles in around the loop in Central Park, and then moves out to Northern California. I guess becomes a venture capitalist, takes it a little more seriously. Not even on the team for women for cycling for road race. Yeah. The person who was supposed to one of the 2 people that was supposed to represent America pulls out and
she's
gives
a
her the spot.
replacement and wins gold,
A
which is
replacement.
like the epitome of the
I
Olympic
know.
story.
And
It's amazing.
And the dominant
Yeah,
fashion.
the Olympic stories, yeah.
It was incredible. Like to watch her just close the gap against the two women that were leading, and like just overtake them like.
And then she bolted, and then
Bolted.
she like bolted out of there.
It was like nothing. I
Yeah.
know. Like and like you see, in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, the time, right? Like the time between the lead group or the lead rider and the chase group, and all of a sudden, as soon as she goes past him, you just see it like 2 seconds or 10 seconds, 12 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And she winds up winning like no one's in sight. No one was in sight. It was incredible. And it's frustrating for me because you see something like, Simone Biles is like on a whole nother planet, right? And
Right.
Katie Ledecky's on a whole nother planet.
planet, right.
But this was on that level, but it's just not getting the attention I think
Right.
that it deserves.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And
But-
we have to give our patriotic dues, pass out the flowers for all our Olympians out there doing all this stuff. And like, it's
Yeah.
crazy because I mean, I've been waking up and just see whatever's on TV because of the time difference. You get all kinds of stuff.
It's great.
And I've watched way too much ping pong and badminton that I've
Right.
ever
It's
haven't
cool.
watched. And like,
It's fun.
it's just so crazy to watch all these like different sports that you don't see.
Right.
I even saw the rock climbing or wall climbing.
The
speed
climbing. Those people are crazy.
That guy broke his own world
I
record.
haven't seen that at all yet.
Oh,
but,
yeah, I hope you didn't
and then
just ruin it for
kayak
today.
Cross. Did you guys see the kayak cross sport? That was wild.
So-
You can just watch. All you have to do is watch the start of it, and you're
Right.
like, these guys are insane.
When they all go bombing in, my daughter,
Yeah.
we watched some of the trials, and my daughter was like so gung ho about this. And I actually haven't seen the real races, but no, I'm excited to watch it now.
So it's exciting that we have all this stuff.
Right.
Before we go deep into all our conversation, because we just surface level what we're talking about, just give a quick shout out to one of our sponsors, Virtual Orthopedics and Spine. They have you covered from runner's knee to dog walker's hip to yard work back and laptop wrist. They have a doc for that. So find the right specialist for you at virtua.org/ortho. And I'm sure people who are newly interested in all these crazy sports are going to try something and get some orthopedic.
They're going to need some help.
They're going to need some. They're going to need some help. So give a call to our friends over at Virtua.
Job security.
Yep,
yeah.
job security, absolutely. So I guess, like we mentioned before, you have a background in gymnastics, and I think we could just go right into it and just with the spearhead, the figurehead, if you will, or like the Simone Biles is just a freak athlete all around.
It's amazing.
And it's amazing. She's
literally amazing.
just dominant.
Right.
And she did it injured.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And it's funny, we kind of prepped everything, and I do my little outline for the show. And I'm doing some, some research this morning, and I guess last night she was on NBC.
She's in a boot.
In a boot. So it's like, so was something going on now? We're being precautious.
Right.
So we could dive into that a little bit. And, I will say I haven't really seen too much of I didn't see like her go down in the injury. Like I just knew it happened, and I saw kind of kept up to date on the headlines and stuff.
It was interesting when you texted me that. I was like, when I tell you I follow everything on like gymnastics on Instagram accounts, this and that, I hadn't actually seen yet her wearing the boot.
Right.
And I was like, that's so interesting. So
Yeah.
she actually, for people that didn't know, it was in qualifications, which is like the first meet that happens before any of the medals are handed out. And it was when she did that crazy first tumbling pass that everyone, like, I feel like knows her for. It's her like triple double.
Which is like 50 feet in the air.
Yeah, she's like 15 to 20 feet up high in the air.
That's crazy.
And she came down from that in warm-ups, and I heard her go over to her coach and say, I tweaked my calf.
Right.
And I saw her, I'm not like a big lip reader, but I saw her say it. And then she went and told her other coach, and that's when he went and stood in the corner and kind of caught her on the next tumbling pass. So I feel like it was when she did that everyone was kind of looking. So, so me, again, from understanding gymnastics, load, being a physical therapist, all that a little bit more, I'm like, people have to understand that gymnasts intentionally do not land a lot of their skills in warm-ups because the shock absorption is so high required on those surfaces that they actually are trying to like save, they're trying to save their joints. And she did it on a few of her vault warm-ups too, where she like fell, and I feel like people were like, ooh, and I'm like, no, she intentionally like didn't make that skill. She actually did it in floor finals yesterday because it was bothering her.
She's just kind of rolling with it.
Kind of like fell out of it. So my biggest thing though, and Brandon, you have this on a couple of points about a couple other people with Achilles injuries, and I'm thinking, okay, she just tweaked her calf, and in qualifications, it was bad
Right.
enough she couldn't walk without a limp. I mean, she was crawling down the vault runway,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking,
Oh
okay,
God.
everyone's saying that this is just like a strain or a tweak, and I'm going, but this is, this could be a recipe for disaster.
Oh
So the
yeah.
whole Olympics, I was just like, please do not rupture your Achilles
Mm-hmm.
tendon, because
Right.
that's what I was, fearing it would go to. So thank God she had a great Olympics. She crushed it.
Amazing.
All I could find on the boot was that it really was precautionary. In
Right.
my
Right.
mind, I think she has a tour coming up, like a gymnastics tour, and I think they're probably like, okay, you just did. I think she did something like 17 routines over the course of this
Jesus.
Olympics,
Right.
and
Crazy.
it's just, I think they're probably like, we got to shut it down. Give
Mhm.
it some rest for like a week kind of thing, or however long. I don't. They haven't said anything, but
Right.
and then hopefully she'll just start to reintroduce load to it, and she'll be good to go.
Were you surprised that she was able to compete through? And after that first day when she tweaked it, right, like, and she was like not good, and kind of a thing. And like you said during the qualifiers, I actually, and she was limping around, and just like you said, she was actually crawling at one point right when it first happened. But then she seemed to be back to normal. Like, were you surprised that she wasn't limping around from that point going
Yeah.
forward until she sort of re-aggravated it again last night?
Right. Yeah. And that's, I mean, they kind of said, I just tweaked my calf, right? I think
Right.
that's
Right.
what she said. And it's like, then all of us in the rehabby world are
Mm-hmm.
thinking, I'm like, well, what did you
Ugh.
tweak? Was it your gastroc? Was it your
Right.
posterior tib?
Right.
I think from watching her, she kind of has more flat feet. So then my mind gets turning about like, shock absorption through there from
Sure.
that pronation.
Right.
And, you kind of go down the line, and then actually, Brandon, I said this to you the other day. I was like, I just wish they shared more, like, what did they do?
Right.
They had qualifications one day, and then 2 days later, like the team finals, 2 days later, all
Right.
around finals. So they
Right.
have a day in between, and it's like, I'm sure she was working with athletic trainers, the doctor, PTs, and it's just like, I don't know what they threw at her. I don't know if they
Yeah.
were just doing a ton of soft tissue work on
Right.
it. Stuff. She kept foam rolling it. I think it was one of those things. That's why I think it was, for her, felt more muscular.
Right.
But I
Right.
was just so worried about that turning into a bigger issue. But I think she was just trying to keep it loose. And, let's be honest, I'm sure it didn't feel, I'm sure she still felt it that whole
Yeah.
time, but it's the Olympics, and these guys are freaking tough. So
Right.
they're just going to show up. And, I think she went into that Olympics saying, like, I'm giving this my all, no matter what.
Yeah.
I have to imagine, after the way things had unfolded for her in Tokyo too, that like there was a certain part of her that was like, unless I like physically, it's impossible for me to do this. I'm going out there to try to
Right.
do it. Just because I think she wanted redemption, which was like a whole theme for this
Yeah.
for the whole thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that was for a lot of the girls' teams. I mean, I know most people know Simone Biles' stories, but I mean, Suni on her team, even Jordan, like
Wow,
what
yeah.
Jordan's gone
Yep.
from the last Olympics to now, it's like, this was really, I don't know. I mean, I love every Olympic year, but I'm like, I just loved the whole story this year of the gymnastics team, both
Right.
men and women, actually
Right.
was awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it just goes to show, like, just how, like you said, how tough these athletes are, and yet, like, I don't think they get enough credit, because I just, surface level, my knowledge of gymnastics is that it's just so grueling, and there's so
Right.
much to it, and there's so much load on your joints and all this stuff, and the training's so extensive, and it's just so long, and you start training so early on, and like
Right.
you really have to dedicate yourself to be that good, and then
Yeah.
Simone Biles is just doing it at an elite level for so long, and
Right.
she's only 27, but she's considered kind of older in the world of
Within
gymnastics,
this
which
world,
is
right.
crazy to think about too. Where like,
Yeah.
But it's a young
Yeah.
world. It's a
Yeah.
young sport.
I
right?
know. I mean, gymnastics in the past couple years has come a long way with like the age of athletes. But
yeah,
Simone Biles, this was I saw this post on Instagram. It was, since I want to say like 70, somewhere in the 70s. Since 1976. Every all-around Olympic winner for gymnastics has been under the age of 20 until now.
Seriously.
That's like
That's
almost
amazing.
40 years. And yeah, here
Oh my.
I'll just rifle off the ages. It was literally, so 76 on, it was 14, 18, 16, 19, 15, 17, 16, 16, 18, 16, 19, 18, 27.
My.
So it's like
Right.
You know, so for everyone who's like, she's not old, I'm like, well, I mean, your body does. I mean,
Yeah.
for the sport of gymnastics, but and I think too that's a great thing to see is we're really seeing a change in gymnastics
Right.
culture
Right.
overall.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up watching the 1996 Olympics, like that's the team I fell in love with. You know,
Sure.
I was 7 years old, like
Right.
cheering on those girls, and now when you just all this stuff that's kind of come out about the training and the coaching and just the culture and just how yes we were dominant but it maybe not was the best environment for the
Right.
gymnast type of thing and
For
how much
sure.
growth we've had there.
Right. Right. And for anyone who doesn't actually watch it, like in terms of a sport, I don't know another sport that requires like so much skill, athletic ability, strength, like in every facet
Every
of
aspect of like yeah.
athleticism, like it is extraordinary, like what they can do, like absolutely extraordinary. It is, yeah. It's a little bit of a shame because it's a 4-year sport, right? Like like it kind of goes to the back burner of the public's eye for the most part until the Olympics come around,
right.
and then people are all in. And I myself, I got to say, I don't know why I'm much further all in on this particular Olympics than I had been in some of the the last, I don't know, 1 or 2, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting just to see just the development of all these people. And I think, Sam, when I talked to you yesterday, you dropped a bomb on talking about how like our Olympic team did so well with the team that's out there in Paris right now. But like that's not even like the people who were like in the headlines for those who follow gymnastics leading up into it. And we lost like 3 people to the pretty significant injuries.
Yeah, we lost 3 people, and 2 of them were pretty much ranked like number 2 and 3 going into the Olympics, which just goes to show. I mean, it's amazing how good our gymnastics team is, but it's sad to see in a way. It's like, okay, I mean, 3 gymnasts went down. U.S. trials, like 1 in practice, like the weekend of the meet, and then 2 in warm-ups for the actual like U.S. Olympic trials. So
like
it's
within
just
like a couple days of each other, it all just went down. Like everybody just got hurt, which is crazy.
Who were those other athletes that were would have potentially otherwise been in the spotlight? Would have potentially otherwise been on the team that went down with injury?
Yeah. So, Sky Blakely, she was the one that got injured first. She had an Achilles tendon rupture on floor. She actually finished second to Simone in the U.S. Championships. So she was kind of like consistently coming in like second place all around, right? Because there's like Simone is next level, right? So then you have to talk about like, okay,
next level
coming in, behind her. And then Kayla DiCello was probably, again, you got to kind of ask everyone like where people are falling in. She was probably ranking about number 3, maybe number 4, depending on who you ask.
Right.
And she was also an Achilles tendon injury on her vault warm up. And as far as I know, I hadn't heard of any prior stuff going on with her, like any sort of strains or anything like that. And then Shilese Jones, also on vault, tore her ACL and meniscus, which you didn't know. You just knew it was a knee injury, and she actually did compete bars. Because all you have to do is, land on your feet, right, which she did, and she did great. But then she scratched the rest of the meet, and then she was out the following day, which meant she was officially, out for trials kind of thing. So, yeah.
Which is just crazy because, like, that's the sad part about the Olympics, too, is when these injuries happen, is that you prepare all these years, and it's one time the peak, and it's, the 4th year, and something happens like that.
Very small window.
And it's not like
yep. And I think for a sport like gymnastics, like people, again, it's improving, but it's such a small window of time where your body can actually handle it that some of these girls will get another Olympics and then some might not, so that's it's tough to see that,
like even like you said, like the average age was so young, so you're looking at someone just arbitrarily saying they're 18 years old, they look like they're phenomenal, they're going into it, and they get injured. Next time they're going to compete is 22, and outside of Simone Biles, that's like,
it's kind of old for the Olympics.
Kind of old, and you're probably not going to do anything. You're not going to make a point.
As crazy as that sounds,
it's crazy. It's unbelievable where like our wheelhouse primarily for the show has been the primary big 4 major sports in U.S., if you will, and those guys are all between 25 and 30 some, and we call the guys who are a little older in the range of the 30s or a little older, but now like Simone Biles at 27 is like old, which is like whoa. It's just so crazy to think about just the difference in the sport and like the demands of it and the age aspect.
So Sam, you established kind of what your your specialty is in the world of physical therapy, and but you also at the same time have this niche in gymnastics. Do you see all gymnastics injuries as they roll in and see and treat, or is it only specific to the kind of your main stuff?
So yeah, I actually had a gymnast here earlier and we were discussing this question and I said, it'd probably be easier to talk about the body parts that are not, that I don't commonly see injured as a gymnast versus the body parts that are.
Right.
So ironically, we don't see a ton of neck injuries, which I mean, is probably a good thing because they would be
God.
horrible if they
That's
were
catastrophic.
And then not a lot of hip stuff. I mean, maybe some hip flexor kind of like tendinopathies, so to speak, but nothing massive. I think we tend to see like the more serious stuff is definitely like ankle sprains, ankle fractures. Luckily, I work with a younger gymnast population, that like 10 to 18 probably. So, and I mean, you guys know this again with your backgrounds, but we see more issues happening to the bones, right, versus the tendons type of thing. So I fortunately haven't had Achilles tendon ruptures, but I've had, Sever's disease, OCD lesions, all that stuff. OCD lesions are actually really common in the elbow.
Yeah, that's what we see all
for
the time.
gymnasts. And that kind of ties in with, a little bit of shoulder instability. A lot of gymnasts have wrist pain. I feel like that doesn't always land them in PT, but it's usually something we kind of come across.
Well said.
And then the knee injuries are usually usually hyperextension injuries. So whether it's ACL, PCL, meniscus, tibial plateau fractures, knee dislocations, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Like in the world of orthopedics, it's very traditional, like gymnast, OCD of the elbow, it's like synonymous. Like those are the injuries that we see all the time. And granted, they get beat up. It's such a tough sport on the body. But like, I don't know, like just like you said, like we see that all the time. It's pretty crazy. And
the OCD lesions, they're tough. And I think what is hard, every other sport, it's, you can kind of segue back into a sport. It's like, okay, kind of like start practicing with your team, right? And you just kind of ramp up. And then I kind of find with the gymnast, the hard thing is it's such your entire body. It's so physically demanding. I was just having this discussion with one of my patients. She's 4 months out, OCD lesion, drilling on one elbow and 3 months on the other.
Wow.
And we're starting to talk about, she's just entering weight bearing, and we're talking weight bearing, like front plank weight bearing, and the getting back into the gym and what skills to start with. And that's where I do feel so lucky that I have the gymnastics background, because I'm like, I would have no idea how to progress these gymnasts from, okay, you can do this skill, this skill, this skill. This is when you can start doing tumbling passes. This is when you can start vaulting without knowing those loads. But I kind of find that's where it's really hard to get them to follow those timelines. Like this girl, she's been out for a year basically from weight bearing. And it's like, okay, you don't want to go back and then re-injure this. So, these injuries take a long time to come back from. And so when you see some of the injuries that have happened and you're like, these gymnasts have so much perseverance to try to power through them and make it back. Because most of them are, a good 9 months to a 12-month recovery process. And
it's interesting that you say that, because again, I don't have the same background that you have, but in even just watching the broadcast, we record on Tuesday, so it's a Tuesday night, right? So watching the broadcast last night on Monday, the last events of the Olympics for gymnastics, they're actually as they were going through the floor routine, and I think the night before as they were going through the vault, they made a point of that. If that's one of the reasons why Simone Biles is able to get so high, how she's able to generate so much power, that when she's launching for her vault, or she's launching on the floor routine for her aerial, whatever
the moves that are named after her, those things,
that her elbows are locked out straight, where most athletes have, there's a little bit of bend in there where it's just so hard to keep it locked straight, but she does such a great job of locking her elbows out straight, which gives her the ability to launch so high. But that is so much stress across the elbow, across the OCD lesion or whatever it is that they have going on in there.
Yeah, and then I think too, body type really, right? Like this stuff matters. Like some people just genetically are going to be designed better than others. So, you know, for example, my little gymnast with the, you know, bad OCD lesion, she has so much hyperextension in her elbows and really limited wrist extension. So right off the bat, I was like, okay, so you've probably been not loading wrist great and just taking all that load to your elbows. So then you look at Simone, who actually we don't know, right? I've never been like, Simone Biles, stick your arm out and let me see if you have any hyperextension. So maybe she just really learned to control that. When we say locked out, might be different than what they're calling locked out, right? Like she can keep neutral. So it's a little, maybe a little less load and really power through her shoulders, get some more scapular, you know, protraction push through there to give her obviously that additional power. But it's just one of those, everything connects in a gymnast. And that's, I think that's what makes it fun to treat them too, because you get to be this little detective of like, you know, okay, you're having, you know, I mean, you know, a gymnast with low back pain. It's like, I mean, I could find that you have limited low back pain because you actually are lacking overhead shoulder mobility, or maybe because your hip flexors are actually super weak. You know, it just, it kind of stems around and you got to kind of dig around and look for it a little bit.
Yeah, doing all that kinetic chain investigation is definitely one of the fun parts of the job. That's for sure.
Yes, totally.
And you can get geek out a little bit about that and like kind of dial in and find those little things. It's like, what? Your ankle's the reason why your back's bothering you? Oh, okay, this is crazy. Then you
and that's, I mean, to tie it with like the Achilles tendon ruptures, I feel like most people don't realize that gymnasts, if you think about when you watch a gymnast, their toes are so pointed, everything is so straight that people always think gymnasts are insanely flexible. But the one thing that tends to chronically be tight on gymnasts is their ankles, because they're pointing their toes and in so much plantar flexion that gastroc, soleus, and basically all those toe flexors tend to be tight. So that's going to lead to that recipe of disaster again, where it's like, okay, some of them don't even have past neutral, you know, 0 degrees of dorsiflexion. And then when you watch where they land, if they land short, or actually where a lot of those Achilles tendon ruptures happen is on the skill before they land. So like with the backwards tumbling, when they're doing that back handspring into that big back flip, they kind of have to land in a super dorsiflex position, you know, their body's forward from their ankle. And unfortunately, that's a lot of times where you just see it, you know, you can see it go.
So this amazing athlete that's flipping all over the floor would struggle to get down and play catcher. That deep squat.
Ironic.
Yeah, and that's actually, I don't know what it is. I don't know guys gymnastics as well, but you know, people always say like guys, they stick their skills so much better. And I'm like, if you just simply watch how a guy lands versus a girl, I'm like, it's right there. It's their ability, you know, to kind of sit down into that squat a little bit lower and better control, you know, their positioning. Where the females tend to land a little bit more upright, which I don't think their joints love, but
Speaking of you know, male gymnasts, then I think that brings us to Brody Malone, who was in the Olympics. But I guess there was a huge question mark as to whether or not he was gonna make the Olympics. Can you tell us a little bit about his injury, you know, whatever, like a year or so ago?
Yeah. So I, again, he's kind of one, right? I follow men's gymnastics mostly around Olympic years and then not really outside of that. So it wasn't until Olympic trials were happening that, you know, I heard about his injury. And it happened in 2023, I want to say like winter, early spring. He actually slipped off the high bar. It was and he was the world champion on high bar the year before. So this is like an awesome event for him. By the way, I don't know if you guys watched the men on high bar. That is the one event that when I'm like, they're absolute psychos with what they do. With the way they just fly over the bar and release, and the things that they do is wild. So you could imagine in one of those crazy things, the way he, you know, slipped off, landed, tore his meniscus, tore his LCL, had a tibial plateau fracture, partial PCL tear. He ended up having like a external fixator put in. I don't even remember what country he was in. Then flew home.
I think from the article I read, I think he was stuck in Germany and he had to get surgery like there or something when he was doing it, which is just crazy.
And then I think when he got back to the U.S., you know, he had, you know, more surgeries to kind of fix the tibial plateau fracture and some of the cartilage damage. But again, you guys know this stuff, the recovery time. Like if someone told me that last year, like, do you think he'll be in the Olympics next year? I'd be like, there's no way.
No shot.
Just from no shot. So
because not only does he have to heal, he has to get into shape and get back, you know, like it's incredible.
Yeah. Then again, I mean, Kayla DiCello posted a video online of her, you know, in her boot, ripping away, climbing up the rope, conditioning at gymnastics. So, you know, if you want it, I feel like they're like, okay, we're going to try to keep everything else, you know, tip-top shape, do the best that we can. But I can't believe the work that he had to go through to come back. And he did not do well in qualifications for the Olympics. So I'm just so happy to see the men's team. I mean, they had to,
it's really
they
exciting.
had to do amazing to get that bronze medal, and they freaking did. So
I think one of the best lines of the Olympics was one of the announcers at that point when they had just won it, saying this is a gold medal celebration for bronze.
Yeah.
Right, which was a fantastic line. But aside from that, I didn't know about his history, and again, I've just been kind of all in on watching the Olympics and the the highlights and whatnot. And of course, like I can't watch it all day every day. I really wish I could because I do love it.
It is awesome.
But we've been really like pretty darn focused at watching it in the evenings and everything. And they originally reported that it was a knee dislocation, which it sounds like it was, not a patella dislocation, but an actual knee dislocation, which is a much, much worse injury.
Yeah.
It's a limb-threatening injury, right? And they had also reported ACL tear, but in doing some due diligence, it doesn't look like his ACL was torn. In fact, it was.
I know, and I heard the same thing you did because I also thought ACL, and then it was when I rechecked it, I was like, oh, okay, it wasn't ACL, but the cartilage repair, I didn't really dive into what kind of cartilage repair they did, microfracture oats, what kind of road they went down with that.
Sure.
But so obviously, he definitely had that period of non-weight bearing. I saw a picture. It was like last July, so 1 year ago, he was like just starting to weight bear in a brace on crutches.
Right.
So it's wild.
But I have to imagine, in all honesty, I think the big difference between him getting back for this Olympics and not getting back was the fact that his ACL didn't go, right? Like I think if his ACL goes in that tear and that injury, that he's probably not participating in the Olympics. And the fact that he had all these other injuries, but his ACL hung on, I think that's likely the difference why he was able to.
I know,
get
and
back.
then you kind of wonder how did his ACL hang on?
Right,
That's a good question. Right.
Like what in the world? Proper vector forces or whatnot applied to his knee that saved it.
I watched the injury, and it looked like a very unusual injury where, like, as he was swinging, his foot caught like the edge of the mat or a piece of the mat that was sticking up or something or other. And it was that force that he was swinging so hard and his foot happened to catch that dislocated the knee, as opposed to sort of your usual kind of landing with a lot of force and the tibia, the shin bone sliding forward anterior relative to the femur, causing the tear, or like this non-contact pivoting. It was actually this weird injury where his foot caught while he was swinging and just did a strange thing to his knee. And lucky for him, the ACL did hang on.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, it was Sky Blakely announced on Instagram. Again, she had ACL and meniscus repair that she's making her comeback. So in her case, now she's got 4 years to work for it. But, big, long, and actually then to jump to Rebecca Andrade.
Yes.
Oh, man, that was awesome.
She is such a powerhouse gymnast who, good for her, the way everything. I'm a huge Simone Biles fan, and I was so disappointed about floor yesterday. But at the same time, Rebecca always is finishing, behind Simone because Simone is just so good.
Yeah.
And so to see her get that gold medal and that picture they took of them, just totally bowing
down,
I know. That's where I feel like you got to give Simone credit. No matter what you think happened in Tokyo, it's like the respect that she gives the other gymnasts is crazy. And Rebecca has torn the same ACL 3 times, which is
incredible.
Wild.
That's a lot.
4 years apart. They were like, it was like 1 year, 2 years later, and then 2 years later.
Oh my gosh.
I've torn my ACL one time and I'm good. I don't want to do that ever again. And like, that's enough for me. I mean, granted, silver lining, it derailed my whole life and put me in the career to become an athletic trainer. But other than that, silver lining behind that, I was like, never again will I want to do this. Yeah. But to do it 3 times in 4 years and to compete at such a high level and just.
Yeah. And then to keep trying to come back is like, oh my gosh, the perseverance and just the toughness is crazy.
Right.
And I'm sure it's happened, right? Like after the second time, like well, maybe we alter what you're doing, and maybe I'm sure someone had to be the naysayer. Like someone had to be the negative Nancy in the situation, say, well, maybe we hang it up and not do gymnastics anymore.
Sure.
And she kept pushing, and then did it the third time. Maybe no, we're gonna keep going, and then you go all the way to the Olympic stage and you win a medal, which is like
and would have won many more medals throughout her career had she not been good at the same time that Simone Biles was. Present.
Yeah. And I mean, she came in second all around in the last Olympics in Tokyo.
Right.
And
so
her last ACL tear was 2019. So she's kind of one of those ones that like had the Olympics happened in 2020. she probably wouldn't have gotten,
Very good point.
like might not have gotten that silver medal, and then it being pushed out the year, definitely helped out.
Right.
Yeah, so
And
that was one of the cases that COVID kind of helped out a little bit, so good for her in that
one of the
regard.
few.
One of the few, right?
Yeah, one of the few. I mean, yeah, I was thinking about that with gymnastics when it happened. I was like, all these gymnasts have been preparing for this for 4 years. They're so ready to go. And then to try to keep their bodies in, competition shape for one more year.
So hard.
That's a lot to ask.
Yeah. And it's not even just staying in that shape. They're training. They're training to peak at the right time.
At the right time.
And then you do all of that, and then it's all just thrown off, and you have to start again. It's pretty crazy. And it was really great to see, like you said, Andrade to win and have some success, and to see the respect of the other gymnasts that she comes across as this first they gave a little story about her background, and it's incredibly impressive that she is where she is after seeing some of the background story, and then two, actually I don't even want it seemed like across the board for women's gymnastics this year, like to see the athlete from China, how supportive she was of everybody. Across the board, it really seemed like people, like a lot of these athletes were cheering for other athletes that they were competing against, and people cheering for. And actually, it's funny. I had this conversation with my daughter just yesterday, or 2 days ago, we were watching Leon Marchand. I forget the swimmer for France.
Oh, yep.
And,
yep.
And even I guess the first thing that comes across is, like, in his interviews, he seems like a generally nice guy, which makes it a little bit easier to root for him. And then number two, even though he's not an American athlete, he's not swimming for the U.S., you seem to want to cheer for greatness, right?
Yeah.
You start thinking, is this Michael Phelps in his first Olympics? Is this the start of greatness?
One,
right? Yeah. And the next thing you know, in your mind, you're kind of pulling for him and cheering for him. It's incredible how greatness sort of pulls that out of people, where you just want to. And I feel like a lot of the other gymnasts, the women gymnasts in this Olympics, that's what they were doing. They were, other gymnasts were cheering for Simone Biles. Simone Biles is cheering for Rebecca.
Right.
It's great to see.
And it's like the hiccups that happened to the U.S., as devastating as they were, every single one of them I felt like led to something good. Beam was a disaster for most gymnasts.
That was unbelievable, right?
Yeah, it was terrible to watch. I was watching it before leaving for work, and I was like, this is gut-wrenching to see. But D'Amato, who ended up winning gold,
the Italian,
she, again, you only notice this if you were really following gymnastics, but she was consistently coming in fourth and just not making the podium.
Just
she came in fourth all around, fourth vault. So it's like, okay, you know what? Was I super upset that Simone and Suni didn't medal? Yeah, but at the same time, this other gymnast has worked super hard. She finally hit a routine when no one else did. And it's like, good for her. Like, you kind of find yourself cheering for everyone, saying you know what? You deserve this too,
For sure.
Right, and I think it goes to show, yes, the top three people get their awards, they get their medals, but all the people who've competed in the Olympics are the elite of the elite. They're way up there.
I know.
And they put all that work in, and it stinks to see that person who finishes eighth, they don't get the the recognition, but it's still that's top 10 in the world, which is really impressive,
incredible.
And can't beat it.
Very few people are ever at that level at anything in their entire lives. It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
So the next big question becomes, again, Simone Biles,
right,
is 27 years old. However, I think a lot of the athletes, Katie Ledecky included, were, I think, impressed and enthusiastic watching the French crowd get behind the French athletes who are performing very well in this particular Olympics, right?
Yeah.
And it was, I think it's somewhat inspirational for a lot of our best athletes to maybe try to make it back, given the next Olympics are going to be in LA.
Right.
What are your thoughts? What are the chances here that our 27-year-old Simone Biles is able to get back in some fashion competing in gymnastics?
At 31 years old.
31.
I know. So honestly, if anyone can do it, I'm gonna say Simone Biles 10.
Yeah, I agree.
But and then it comes down to, does she want to? I
Does
mean,
she
I
want to?
think if she can stay, and I think it's almost one of those things. I don't think she'll decide on, like, if she continues to stay healthy year after year. And like you said, everyone focuses on the Olympics, but
Right.
there are national and worlds,
World champs,
that
yeah.
happen
Right.
every single year.
But
So
she wins
I
every
feel
year.
like,
Right.
yeah. So if she stays in it and is like, okay, I'm doing well and I feel good and I'm still enjoying gymnastics, I think that's a big difference. I think in 2020, a lot of stuff that went down in Tokyo and some stuff that I was reading and following with her, I mean, just the pressure that was on her, like she was not in a good headspace with
Right.
gymnastics
Yeah.
in general. And I think she said that about this Olympics, like
Sure.
she loved this Olympics and
Yeah.
just had such a good time. And so in a way, if I were her, I would want to go out on a bang, right? I would
Right.
be like, I want to be done, but Simone is Simone and you're the greatest of all time, no matter what. So
Yeah.
Do what you want.
I would love I selfishly would love if she came back in LA just to see her greatness again. But I think it'll kind of just depend on what happens, her body, and just her life. If she gets to the point where she says, I want to hang it up and call it a day, and there you go.
I feel like that's a little bit of a theme within these Olympics. And I feel like Katie Ledecky was sort of saying the same thing when she was asked the same question. And a lot of it was like, I have to see what my relationship is with swimming at that point.
Right.
Like, do I still love it? Or is it, work and miserable and the pressure, it's really interesting that I feel like a lot of the athletes are sort of approaching it with the same philosophy and thought process.
Yeah.
And I think
Which is great to see, the
I
mental
agree.
growth too across the board.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about it a few times on the show of just mental health and how it's just changed the aspect and like the landscape of athletics as a whole, college athletics, professional athletics, and like it's just so much more on the forefront of like these athletes are taking care of themselves mentally. They're not pushing through it and just doing it to do it. And
It's okay to not be okay. Like
right,
you said.
exactly, right. And you don't want to see like I'm all for seeing Simone Biles go out there and do really well, but also don't want to see her go out there just because she's the hometown hero and she wants to do because everybody else is doing it.
Right.
And I don't think she's at that point where she will.
Yeah.
But if she does show up, if she shows up and she gets on the podium, it's just
Right.
that at 31 years old, that's crazy.
I feel like she can do it.
And I
If
think
anyone's gonna
she's
do
the
it.
one who can do
Right.
it. I mean, when you're so good and so dominant and there's multiple moves named specifically just after you and you just
Right.
you do something crazy and new, they don't have a name for it,
Right.
you have the right to keep
When
going
they
for it.
have to create a new level of difficulty
Uh-huh.
that didn't exist before to grade, qualify, judge the things that you do. Clearly you're changing.
It's like getting a curve
the
on a
sport.
test in college. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like everyone's on the same level now because she's just so good.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it's awesome. It's awesome.
While we take a quick break, we'll just give a quick shout out to our sponsor again, Virtua Orthopedics and Spine. They have you covered from runner's knee and dog walker's hip. They have a doc for that. Yard work, back, and laptop wrist. They also have a doc for that too. Virtua Orthopedics and Spine has over 120 providers, over 20 PT and rehab facilities, and more than 25 surgical centers all across South Jersey. So find the rest specialist for you at virtua.org/ortho.
Yeah.
So just had to get that in there real quick.
So,
but
Sam, and watching the Olympics this year, clearly there's an affinity for you, as you said, for gymnastics, and I could see a clear connection. You have a history with the volleyball. Are there any new sports that you weren't really super familiar with that you've been introduced to, or you seem to have been roped into in watching the Olympics?
I mean, I think not. It's hard to understand. I feel like from a PT perspective, right? You really want to understand how it all comes together and how it all happens. So while I'm wildly impressed from the Olympics, like just watching badminton, I'm like, I don't even understand how it's possible for your hand-eye coordination to like move that fast and for it to go that fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just trying to
That
understand
is one of those
a little bit
sports.
more. Yeah. And then, and then you just watch some of the other stuff like mountain biking, I'm thinking
Amazing.
never, you couldn't pay me to like get on that bike and like ride around that course. Like just you couldn't do it. So just, so much respect. I feel like, again, every sport really, when it's the Olympics, they just do a good job. And like every sport you just somehow get roped into and find yourself like cheering on and enjoying watching it.
Even like table tennis, like you're
my
like
goodness,
just like enthralled. Like
I
gripping.
watched, the Chinese have been notorious for dominating in table tennis, and I watched the number 1 in the world ranked from China get beat by the number 19 guy from Sweden or something like that.
Yeah.
And just the environment of that, I was like, holy cow, this kid is just out there doing really well. Even the Americans had a really good kid he went to, I don't know, he went pretty far in the tournament.
Yeah.
He lost, but he lost to like the last person, the top seed. He was like number 3 in the world from China, I believe, and he just got kind of beat up a little bit. But to still, and I even saw a compilation this morning of just the best points in table tennis. I'm like, holy cow, that's not just what you're hanging out playing with your friends in your garage.
No, it's amazing.
It's like way more impressive what they're doing out there.
I can't wait. It's a little ways away, and I can't wait for lacrosse to enter the mix. You know, I don't think a lot of the world even knows what that sport is, but you know, having grown up on Long Island and in this area, it's really gained popularity. Like, it's a great sport, and I love it. And I just, it'll be interesting. It'll be exciting to see it happen.
I never played lacrosse. I don't even know all the rules, but I treat a lot of lacrosse players.
Of course you do.
They have made me. It's pretty big in our our high school area. So tons of respect for them as well, and I think that'll be super exciting. It's such a good game to watch.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Very much.
One of my favorites. I have this little fun question at the end for our guests as well, but we're gonna alter it a little bit. So it's, you know, our show is based in a brewery, and we do have drinks while we're doing it. And I know we talked previously, and you're doing this show from work, so we appreciate you coming in from your office and whatnot. But that does lack the ability to have a nice alcoholic beverage,
totally understandable,
or adult beverage with you. But you had to be professional and do what you got to do. So, however, if you had the opportunity to have a beer or a cocktail with any Olympian, past or present, who would it be and why?
Oh, this is so cliche because we've talked about her so much.
Yeah.
But it would definitely be Simone Biles.
Yes. Fair.
And I think it just comes down to, you know, once a gymnast, always a gymnast. I think any gymnast is probably, you know, could hear that and nod their head to it. So I think just the immense level of respect for her, and then just asking her so many more questions about, you know, just the stuff that we don't get to see. Like we talked about, like, all right, so what did they do for like your cat? Like,
oh my goodness,
how did that play out? And, you know, how does that feel? And what does your regular training routine look like? And, you know, she talks about doing therapy, and it's like, all right, tell us a little bit more about that. I just feel like, you know, we know so much of her story, but it's one of those stories that the more I know, the more I want to know.
Sure.
So I just think she's just an awesome person. And I think everyone saw that, you know, come across this Olympics, not just a great gymnast, but an actually awesome person. And she just always, you know, has a smile on her face. She keeps things light. She definitely lifted up her teammates, you know, so much. So again, I would love that. And I would honestly say, Simone, whatever you want to drink, I'll drink it too.
Sure.
We'll have to tag her in the post when we make this video. Hopefully she gets some traction there.
How great was it to see, like, the level and the number of celebrities that are there at the Olympics watching her, right? Like it's just, and who are blown away. Like you see Tom Brady, like oh wow, like just blown away by what she can do.
And even just like, I think the simple fact of like her husband, who's an NFL player, got permission to miss training camp to go to Paris to watch her perform, which is just like, that's tough. These guys, he's taking a time away from his job, his primary job, to watch her perform.
I got to say, on that level, you're going no matter what.
Oh, yeah.
Like, permission or not, right? Like, come on.
Very smart of them, by the way, to put that in his contract.
Right.
Like, I read it was actually in his contract. I was like, wow, good job on your guys' part to, you know, do that. Yeah.
For sure.
Kudos to that agent, right?
Yeah.
So, and I guess we can kind of close out a little bit here, but did you watch your documentary on Netflix yet?
Yeah, so it was only 2 episodes so far, and they're doing 2 more in the fall. I'm pretty sure they did some filming in the Olympics. I'm not, you know, like, of the Olympics.
Naturally.
You know, she posted something on her story that kind of like alluded to that maybe being the case. So yeah, I think you know, everyone should go check it out, because it actually gave. We didn't talk about this at all, but with everything that happened in Tokyo with the twisties, it was way better documented in that documentation of like what she was actually going through. Because I think everyone was like, oh, it's nervousness. Oh, she's having like a mental breakdown. It's like, no, there was actually something like physically, you know, happening, making her body feel like that. And you see a lot of that in the documentary. So if anyone hasn't seen it, it is so worth watching to really see like why she had to back out. This was not like, oh, I'm too scared to go. Sorry, guys. It was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I might die doing it, so I cannot do this.
That exact issue has been documented in multiple sports across the board, and the end of many careers, right? Like in baseball and in golf and in whatnot. Like it's not like it's not like this unheard of phenomena. It happens to athletes, unfortunately, and unfortunately, on the way that it unfolded, I think you're exactly right. That's how it was viewed, as people were like, she didn't have the guts, she didn't care enough, she wasn't able to stand up to the pressure. So it was really nice to see that, number one, the redemption, two, it's incredible that she was able to bounce back from that and get back on track. And
yeah, I mean, she took almost 2 years off from gymnastics too. Like I,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
like it was, you know, I really thought, we were talking about it here because I've had some of the same gymnasts I've had since 4 years ago to now. And I remember saying, like, I don't think she's coming back. Like, she has nothing to prove, you know,
Right.
she already won all these medals. She's already the greatest. Like, I don't think she has to. And then to see that she wanted to come back, honestly, just for herself was super cool, I think.
Right.
And
Agreed.
it's interesting to see like a mild athlete comparison of someone who takes a few years off, doesn't do whatever, is very comparable to Michael Jordan playing baseball for a little bit, coming back and then repeating three championships in a row.
Right.
And again, arguably one of the best to ever do it.
The best.
You got to have Michael Jordan, Simone Biles in the same conversation when it comes to
For
the greatest
sure,
athletes
yeah.
of all time,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah.
easily.
Yeah.
So I think that about wraps up everything. Sam, I just want to thank you again for your
thank you very
expertise,
much.
your time. I know you got some kids to get home to after a long day of treating patients
Yeah,
in your
you
therapy.
too.
I know.
Too.
So I do appreciate that. Anything else before we close out of here? Anything else you want to say? Any last words?
No, this was great. Had a great time talking to you guys, and this was super fun. So maybe we'll have to plan one for the next Olympics where I'll come down to New Jersey and sit with
There
you
you
guys
go.
and actually have a drink.
Sounds spectacular.
Or anytime you're down on the East Coast or in New Jersey, you let us know and we'll have you come on
if
for
you're
sure.
down around this way at any point, please let us know.
We'll find a topic that
Perfect.
we can talk about. Absolutely. So thank you again.
Perfect.
So
All right. Thanks, guys.
You're
got
welcome. And before we go ahead and close out our tab here, we're just going to give a quick shout out to our other sponsors as well, Virtual Orthopedics and Spine, like we mentioned over the show, and Neck of the Woods Brewing Company, putting us up with these coldest and greatest tasting sours in the area, and Timber Reel Productions. One, for setting us up with this awesome guest, Sam Arnold, tonight, and also setting us up.
Everything he does for us.
Everything Kyle does for us. We appreciate you, man. And we'll see everyone next time. Thank you and have a good one.